broadcasting, so we have to speak into the mic.
Yeah.
And if we get questions locally, we have to repeat the question because the mic won't pick it up and we go.
Yeah, I got
So
you.
we have a question from the floor.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. Okay. That's great.
Okay, how do you want to speak? We got water over there.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Beverly Smithia, and I want to welcome you. I want to welcome you to Wellspring, and this is our second Pathways to Peace workshop, and we're glad that you're here. And we appreciate you coming out on such a beautiful day. And we have, I think, some really important information for you today. Before we get started, let me tell you that if you need restrooms, they're down outside the doors, down the hall to the right. If you need anything else, look for anybody that has a name tag like this and just tell us what you need, and we'll figure out how to help you. I don't think there's anything else. Our first speaker is Bill Witt, and I'm going to let him introduce you to him and he can tell you about the business that he runs for Senior Resources, Senior Resources of Austin, right? I have to get the name right. Come on, Bill. We appreciate you being here today.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bill Witt. With me are my two business partners, Tara Kendrick and Stacy Berry. And Tara's going to share the presentation with me this morning. Your sanctuary kind of reminds me of a church I went to out in Sedona, out west, that you go in and it has a beautiful backdrop with, gorgeous scenery behind it. Just a very tranquil setting. This morning we're going to talk about a topic that is actually where our practice started back in 2002. We started out by doing long-term care planning. And this is one of those topics that a lot of people don't want to think about or talk about, but then it happens. And it happened in my family. When my mom was 82, she had a massive stroke. And she got through the stroke, but she was paralyzed, but perky. And she lived 14 years in a wheelchair. A year later, my dad came down with Alzheimer's, and he made it 9 years. And so our family experienced a lot of what we're going to talk about today. It's a topic: how do we prepare for and fund or pay for long-term care? Okay. This talk is part of something we began to put together about a year ago. We call it SRC, Senior Resource Center University. And the focus of it is to provide educational talks that help explain issues that we're all going to encounter in retirement. Most of our recorded sessions, you can find them on our website, srctexas.com. And if you go there, they're 30-minute sessions or less, and they're available on your schedule. You can listen when it's of interest. And they explain a lot of the topics that are in a book that Tara and I wrote back during the 2020 pandemic. We closed our office for about 5 months because nobody wanted to come in and talk, and everybody was afraid of getting sick. And so we had a lot of time, and we started writing some articles, and those articles morphed into a book that's available on our website. It's called More Money for Retirement. And if you go there, you'll see all the different topics that we help explain for people. The book is free. We don't sell it. You can download it, or you can get it off of Amazon, but once again, we're not trying to sell it. We give away copies, or you can download a free PDF. And the best part of SRC University is there is no final exam, so don't worry about that. Okay, our practice is multifaceted. We do 4 things. We do comprehensive retirement planning, and that's helping people not outlive their money. That's one of the big concerns people have when they come to see us. They go, gee, people are living a lot longer. That means your money's got to last longer to support your lifestyle in retirement. And so we build 20 and 30-year retirement plans for our clients. We do tax planning, not tax preparation. We help people find legal ways to pay less tax. We do a lot of long-term care planning. That was the core of where our practice started, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And then we also do estate planning. We're not attorneys, but we make sure that our clients have proper legal documents to protect wishes as you move into and through retirement, and so that you can pass assets to the next generation without going through probate. Today's topics. Very quickly, I'm going to explain a concept of how what's different between a financial advisor and a financial planner. We're going to talk then about the problem, and the problem is we're living a lot longer. This talk wouldn't have had to be given 150 years ago, because if you ever Google how long did people live on average in the Stone Age, any guesses? 30? That's a good guess, 30 years. How about Roman times? 30 years. How about medieval times? 30 years. How about 1900? The average life expectancy in 1900 was 30 years. But today it's a much, much bigger number. It's more like 78, 79, which means in the last 100 plus years, we've figured out a lot of things to live a lot longer. But if we live long enough, either our brains or parts of our body wear out, and that's when we encounter long-term care. So we're going to talk about some strategies to pay for long-term care and not to go broke doing it. Okay, I'm going to touch on this very quickly. Sometimes people say, Bill, are you a financial advisor or are you a financial planner? And that may sound like semantics, but I consider myself a financial planner. And I'll tell you the difference. Most people have a financial advisor that helps them pick products and to solve problems in retirement. It might be picking a Medicare supplement, or it might be selecting investments, stocks, bonds, mutual funds to support asset growth in retirement. And an advisor helps you measure progress. They tell you where you are right now. But our practice is more focused on the future. One of the questions that people have come to us with is, if I live 20 years or 30 years in retirement, and many people will my money last as long as I do? And so in our practice, we have some very powerful software that we can use to build a financial model that pinpoints where people will be financially 20 years into the future. Sometimes when we build the plans, people don't like what they see. It shows that based on spending and income and assets, they're going to run out of money at 83, and they'll be living on Social Security. And that doesn't feel good. So what we found is by making small adjustments early in retirement, you can have a very safe, secure retirement. And so there's a difference, and we consider ourselves financial planners. So what is the problem? And the greatest financial risk, we've said this over and over in our practice, the greatest financial risk any of us are going to face as we go through retirement is paying for long-term care. It's the topic that nobody wants to talk about until it happens, and then usually it's a Chinese fire drill trying to figure out, how am I going to offset these costs? Because the costs have gotten outrageous. So having a plan to pay for long-term care is critical to a safe, secure retirement. And I talk about it as this is the elephant in the room. If you put together longevity, we're living much longer, better medical care, and the end result is more and more of us are going to need long-term care before we go to heaven. If you're 65 years old today, you have better than a 2/3 chance of needing long-term care before you die. Women, on average, get a little bit more care than men do, but if you receive 2 or 3 years of long-term care in a facility, it's very, very expensive. So real quickly, what is long-term care? We define it as one of two things: either substantial physical impairment, where you need assistance with activities of daily living, eating, dressing, bathing, mobility, toileting, or you have substantial cognitive impairment, like my dad did. where our bodies may be still functioning very well, but our minds aren't. And so we need guidance and supervision to accomplish just to live and to maintain nutrition. So, where are the sources of getting long-term care? Far and away, most of it is rendered in a home environment, about 75%. And this may surprise you, but if you start doing the math on what if I bring a caregiver into my home to render care 8 hours a day, 5 days a week or 6 days a week, you start doing the math on that at $25 an hour, and you can easily spend well in excess of $13,000 or $14,000 a month. When Mom had her stroke, my dad had the belief that he could care for her at home. And we weren't so sure about that, but he brought a caregiver, a lady in who was there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And we thought Pop's got it covered. But within about 2 months, I got a call from my brother. They were living up in Michigan. I got a call from my brother in Ohio, and he said, Pop's in the hospital. I said, what? Pop's never in the hospital, but he was. But it was a spell. It was something not to worry about. 2 or 3 months later, he had another trek to the hospital. And 2 or 3 months later, he had his third visit to the hospital, and at that point, it was time out. We got to figure out what's going on. And while my dad had a lady coming in 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, we thought he had it covered. Who was doing the help the other 16 hours a day and on Saturday and Sunday? Just Pop. And Pop was wearing out. So when we do long-term care planning, I worry as much about the healthy spouse, the community spouse, as I do about the person that needs care. You got to protect both. Oh, and very quickly, the other places we get care: independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing, and you can see ranges on what the costs are. When my kids were in college, I can remember writing that tuition bill every semester. It was a lot of money. When you get to long-term care, it's a tuition bill every month. It's very, very expensive. And AARP did a survey a number of years ago with seniors saying, why do people go broke in retirement? Was it Bernie Madoff? The stock market? Overspending? No. It was paying for long-term care. First and foremost, that's the biggest risk we face. So, 5 ways to pay for long-term care. The most obvious is private pay. We can take out our savings in our wallet and start paying for long-term care. And many people do that. Medicare is what I call short-term long-term care. If you turn 65, we help people sign up for Medicare and get supporting products to help eliminate medical expenses in retirement. But one of the things Medicare does is it's designed to pay for short-term, long-term care. If I spend 3 nights in a hospital and then a doctor says, Bill, you need some rehabilitation, and I go home, or I go to a recovery facility, a rehabilitation facility, Medicare will pay for the first 20 days. If I have a Medicare supplement, which I do, it pays for up to an additional 80 days. 20 and 80, 100 days. Most people don't get 100 days. My mom got 37, and she had a Medicare supplement. And the reason is, to tap all 100 days, you have to continue to make progress. So at best, Medicare is short-term, long-term care. Go to a care facility, maybe you get 100 days, but after that, the bills start coming in. The next 2 approaches to paying for long-term care are what we're going to talk about today: veterans benefits and Medicaid. And we'll go into each one of these and explain how they work. The last area is insurance products. There's a variety of insurance products that help defray the cost of long-term care. We used to offer and sell a lot of long-term care insurance. We don't sell very much anymore because the policies have become frightfully expensive. So I guess the takeaway from this meeting is think about strategies. Think about if you do need care, where would you receive it? And then how will you go about paying for it so that it doesn't bankrupt you? Okay. I'm going to turn the presentation now over to my partner, Tara Kendrick. Tara and I partnered back in 2009. And I've had other business partners throughout my career. These two ladies make it fun to go to work every day. So, Tara.
All right, thanks. Hi, everybody. Okay, so a lot of people will call and ask about VA benefits, and VA is a lot of things. It's a big umbrella. There are a lot of different benefits you can get from VA. Medicaid is a lot of different benefits. You've heard of, health care for kids, or SNAP, which is food stamps. With VA, you have disability benefits, you've got health care, you've got all these different things. When we're talking today about VA and Medicaid, we're talking about VA, which is called a non-service connected disability pension with aid and attendance. Big name, and I'll get into that. Or we're talking about Medicaid for long-term care. It's Medicaid for the elderly and people with disabilities. So those are the two programs that we specialize in. So if you want additional information, whether it's for VA or Medicaid, then I can tell you how to get answers to both of those. So the difference between VA and Medicaid, VA aid and attendance can pay anywhere. So if you're receiving care at home, if you're going to an adult daycare, if you're receiving, if you're at assisted living or skilled nursing, it'll pay there. It's like a fixed pension. The asset limit, there are asset limits for VA benefits and for Medicaid for long-term care. The VA has an asset limit this year of a little over $155,000, and then for Medicaid you have to be below $2,000, but we'll explain that a little bit better. Okay, so here's my big word. So it's the non-service connected disability pension with aid and attendance. It was created in 1952. But Congress told the VA they were not allowed to advertise it. So there are many veterans that come to us and say, this doesn't exist, you're lying, I've never heard of it, I'm a general, I'm a, big high up, I've been, really retired military, this doesn't exist. And we have to say, it does, and let me show you where, and talk to your veteran service officer. Because they weren't allowed to advertise. It's in the last 10 years since Bill and I have been working together, the word has gotten out, and I think also with the baby boomers aging, more people are trying to find ways to pay for long-term care. So it is becoming a more popular benefit. And it pays wherever you can't pay. Okay, so in order to qualify for the VA aid and attendance benefit, you have to meet certain criteria. And in this audience, we might only have a small portion of people who are veterans, but you might have a friend or a neighbor or a family member who may benefit for this program. Tell them about it. Tell your son or daughter about it. Grab a brochure before you leave, stick it in the kitchen. Let people know that this is something that they have the right to claim on if they're a veteran of a wartime. So these are the wartime periods. A lot of times they're a little wider than what we typically think of war start and end, which is very nice of the VA. And you have to have served at least one day in that time frame. Okay, go ahead to the next one. So the military service criteria is you have to have honorable discharge, you have to have served active duty for 90 consecutive days, and one of those days has to be in the wartime period. So if you started day one of the last day of that wartime period, but then you served 90 consecutive days after that, you qualify. And not only you qualify, but you and your spouse qualify. So the spouse can also benefit from this. You also have to meet medical necessity. We've had families come in and say, well, I applied and I got denied. And I was like, well, you just drove here. Like, you don't have the medical necessity to qualify for the benefit. It's 2 of the 5 activities of daily living. So you need hands-on assistance with eating, bathing, dressing, toileting, or transference, or you have cognitive impairment, meaning you can't be left alone at home, you have a dementia diagnosis, cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's diagnosis. So it can be either or. So, there's a lot of people with dementia that can dress themselves and feed themselves, but left alone, they might forget to dress and feed themselves. So, go ahead. Okay, and there's two more pieces of this. This is income and assets. So this is where it can get a little tricky. It's easier for single people than it is for spouses with two incomes. And then the reason why is because your income, you have to spend up to or more than your income on care alone. So what does that mean? So if I'm at home and my spouse and I make $6,000 collectively a month, and we're paying someone $1,000 a month to come in and care for us, well, the VA says you don't need our help. You only are spending $1,000 and you have $6,000 coming in. So you have to spend all of it on care. Care can include an in-home caregiver. It can include, and usually that's someone that's helping you with the medical pieces, but also it can be what they call independent ADLs, so someone that's helping you with shopping or transportation or cleaning your home. That can count as a care cost. Another care cost can be your medical premiums, your Medicare Part B premium, your supplement premiums, things like that. So it can get a little tricky when there's two people in the home with two incomes and you're not receiving that much care. If you go into a facility, facilities usually wipe out your income pretty fast because they're expensive. So someone in an assisted living or a skilled nursing or even independent living who has a person coming into their apartment or their home, we can usually find a way to make it work. And then your assets, the VA lets you exempt your home, so your home doesn't count. If it's over 2 acres or you have additional home, that counts towards your eligibility and your total assets. You can have a burial program, and 1 car is exempt, but everything else, anything above 155 and change, they're going to count towards your eligibility, and you won't be eligible. Now, people come to us and say, well, I have $250,000. Okay, well, we can creatively find ways for you to spend that money wisely. Maybe you still have a mortgage. Well, let's pay off the mortgage. Maybe you have some credit card debt. Let's pay off some credit card debt. Maybe you can pay in advance to the assisted living or the independent living place you're having to stay. Let's do that, and we can get it down to under 155 and then apply. And the benefit to that is then you're going to receive money from the VA to offset your cost of care. All right, so this year, the max, I call them pensions, but the max pension for a married veteran is $2,727, a single veteran's $2,300, a veteran's spouse, and what that means is the veteran's healthy, but the spouse is the one needing the care, is $1,806, and then a surviving spouse is $1,478. And I mean, this is money that it's tax-free, it comes to you every month, and it can help offset the cost of care. And maybe you don't need, maybe getting this is just making, you're already just breaking even or paying a little extra to get the benefit, but care doesn't get less, it becomes more, and then it costs more. So it's nice to have that buffer of extra money coming in to pay for the additional care that you might need now or in the future. Okay, so one thing that we've heard many, many times is this is not a do-it-yourself project. We all like to try to do our own things at home and figure out a way, but the VA makes it pretty impossible to do it right the first time. And so they have, it's 15, 20 pages worth of application. And if you miss a field or you do it wrong, and then they put it on the slow train, and it could be a year before you'll hear anything. So I highly recommend that you come see someone like us, that we've been doing this for a long time, or you go to your local veteran service officer. Every county has one, and get their help, and make sure they know how to do it well, because we have encountered veteran service officers in different counties that know a lot of things about a lot of things, and then they don't do aid and attendance very well. So make sure they understand how to do the process of aid and attendance. You do have to show your income and assets, so you have to show bank statements or investment statements or whatever when you apply. They want a full disclosure. Used to, they took your word for it, and then they got smart and said, yeah, we shouldn't do that anymore. So they actually, ask for bank statements. And once you apply, you have very limited communication. You can't call up the caseworker and say, hey, how you doing on my case? Need anything? What's going on? The only thing you can do, they do everything over mail. And the best you can do is call the pension center, and they'll say, well, we're in the development phase, or we're in the decision phase, or we're in the, and then they rattle off this long diatribe about why they can't tell you any more information. So that's kind of where it is. So you kind of get stuck. So you want to try to get it in correctly the first time. It's about, I'm going to say, it got as short as 3 months. Now it's looking like 6 to 9 months for eligibility from the time you apply. However, they will back pay. So if I apply at the end of May and my June 1 is my start date, and they don't award my benefit until December, they will pay me back a lump sum from June to December, and then in January I'll start getting my checks. So it's pretty nice. So it's not like you are hanging on, but they are going to pay you back. Now, if your family member or yourself that's applying pass away in the time that you are in process, they will not award you anything. So that's the unfortunate thing. Where Medicaid, if you're in the process and you pass away, they will still work the case to the finish. So that's something to think about. The other piece of it that I learned through an officer, a veterans officer who was very, very wise, he started asking me questions about a particular family member we had who was deaf. You know, he could not hear anything. He had the special phone and all this. And he said, well, when, you know, because we were applying for aid and attendance. And he said, well, how did he get the hearing damage? And I was like, well, he was in the Air Force, and they didn't have, you know, things to, you know, he's working on jet engines with no hearing protection. And he's like, well, that's a disability based on his time in the military. That could be considered disability benefit. And the nice thing about disability benefits versus aid and attendance is there is no income limit, there is no asset limit, okay? And, but you do have to go to the VA and be approved that, yes, this condition that you have that is causing your disability was from your time in the service. So that's where you'd have to go see a VA doctor, and you have to go down those steps. But the amount they pay if you get awarded 100% is more than aid and attendance. So like my dad, he's a Vietnam vet, and now they're awarding people 100% disability who are exposed to Agent Orange. And so if you're exposed to Agent Orange and you have disabilities, like my dad has diabetes, and they've linked diabetes to Agent Orange exposure, he gets 100% disability, and so he gets like, I don't know, $3,700 a month. And he doesn't have asset or income. So this is just another avenue. We don't particularly do that filing, but we can help connect you with a VA officer. But if that doesn't, you know, you don't qualify for that, but you do qualify for aid and attendance, it is really worth it for your friends, your family, your neighbors, yourself. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Bill to talk about Medicaid benefits. So if you don't qualify for VA because you weren't a spouse of a veteran or a veteran, everyone is eligible for Medicaid benefits. And I think there's a lot of myths about Medicaid, especially of like you have to be broke, you know, you're going to lose your house. There's a lot of myths that go on with that. And we want to debunk those now, because you don't have to get a divorce. You don't have to sell your house. Your house is protected. You know, we can protect. There's 2 rules in Texas, because Texas is a very Medicaid-friendly state. A couple can protect all of their assets and get one spouse on Medicaid, and a single person can protect their house, 1 car, their burial programs, and we can protect 50, 60, 70, 80% of their assets and qualify them for Medicaid. So, but you have to know how to do it and not listen to your neighbor who's telling you their aunt had to go broke before they could get on Medicaid, because that's not true. So I'll leave it to Bill.
Well, now that Tara's told you everything about Medicaid, are there any, no. Medicaid is the great safety net. If we end up getting to a nursing home, nursing homes are very, very expensive. Today in the Georgetown area, probably the average expense for a semi-private room is in the $7,000 range. To get a private room, it could be $8,000 or $9,000 a month. That's a lot of money. And so this is where our practice started back a long, long time ago. The difference between VA and Medicaid, VA pays everywhere. Medicaid is strictly a skilled nursing home solution. So you can't get Medicaid in assisted living, you can't get Medicaid at home. There are other Medicaid programs, and people go, well, I've heard you can get Medicaid at home. You can, but it's maybe 3 hours a day, 3 days a week. That's not a lot of coverage. That's not a lot of help. One last thing I want to mention on VA before we move on. Tara mentioned you have to spend all of your income in order to become eligible. Well, if mom or dad's at home and the caregiver is a son or daughter, the VA doesn't say who receives the payment. So if mom or dad chooses, let's say mom is a widow and has $3,000 of monthly income, and she decides to pay her daughter or her son to come in and provide the care. What the son or daughter does with the money is up to the son or daughter. So as long as the income is going to a, in quotes, caregiver, we can tap and get the VA benefit. If the son or daughter then takes that money and uses it to buy food, pay the utilities, so be it. So just realize there is flexibility in qualifying for VA. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Medicaid. It's skilled nursing only, and there's 4 criteria. There's the Medicaid bed. It's not a special brand of bed. It's a bed that's been contracted to accept Medicaid as a form of payment. So if a nursing home has 100 beds, they sign a contract with the state of Texas saying, we'll accept Medicare for rehabilitation, we'll accept 30 of our beds, we'll accept Medicare. And then we'll sign a separate contract saying, we'll accept 50 of our beds that will accept Medicaid for long-term custodial care. So if they have 50 Medicaid residents, they have a waiting list. So you have to get in a Medicaid bed, have to meet medical necessity just like with VA benefits. This time it's 2 out of 6 activities of daily living or cognitive impairment. And then there are income and asset limits, and that's what we're going to focus on. So, as Tara said, our goals are very simple. For couples, here's the great news, and this baffles a lot of people. You can protect all of your assets and protect the community spouse's income and get one spouse on Medicaid. So the next time somebody says, well, I heard you got to be broke to get on Medicaid, what are you going to say to them? Call Bill. That's what you're supposed to do. Singles can protect most or all of their assets. As Tara said, a house, a car, burial programs, there's a whole bunch of exempt assets. And then when there's countable assets, we have strategies for protecting those. Tara touched on the Medicaid myths, and people come into our office every week and tell us these, and I go, I respect what you're saying. I don't know who told you these things, but they're not true. People come in and go, well, you got to be broke to get on that Medicaid. And earlier, Tara showed a slide, or there was a slide that said there was a $2,000 asset limit. But I'm going to explain why that really doesn't apply. My income's too high. People have told us that. And there is an income limit to get on Medicaid. This year it's $2,829 a month. But if you're above that, there's a waiver program. You can set up a special checking account and you can get on Medicaid. So income never stops people from getting on Medicaid. The next one, the quality of care is poor. When my grandmother was in a nursing home outside of Kalamazoo, Michigan, back 35, 40 years ago, I visited her, and they had tags on the door or on the wing of the nursing home. It said, Medicaid wing, private pay wing. Well, guess what? People in the private pay wing got better care because they were private paying. Medicaid pays less. Well, about 20 years ago, just about the time we were starting our practice, some ads started appearing in the newspaper. Have you or a loved one been the subject of nursing home discrimination? What does that mean? It means there's a lawsuit coming. To run a nursing home in Texas, by law, you have to carry a $10 million liability policy. That's a lot of money. What does that look like to an attorney? A bullseye, lots of money. So attorneys filed lawsuits, and they got some big judgments. And the insurance companies that wrote the liability policies had to write out checks with lots of zeros. I can tell you, they don't like writing those checks. So they went back to the nursing homes and say, you got to change the way you do business. either you treat everybody uniformly or we don't insure you. And if we don't insure you, you can't be in business. So today, if you go into a nursing home and stop an orderly or a nurse and say, is Mr. Johnson or Miss Smith on Medicaid or are they private pay? They're going to go, I don't know. How would I know that? They don't want them to know. So quality of care is uniform. There's another myth that is actually half true. I can give away my assets. We've had people that literally go in the backyard and bury their money in a can. I go, that's not a good idea. But they do it, and I go, but with married couples, we never gift assets. With single people, gifting can be an effective strategy where you can protect about 60% of what you give away. We can explain how that works. And the last one, Tara mentioned, I'm going to lose my home. Every state are now, all the states are now estate recovery states. What does that mean? It means I get on Medicaid in the nursing home, I'm contributing maybe some of my income, and the state's paying what I can't pay. And I get care for 3 or 4 years and then I die. Well, after my death, my son, my daughter, they get a letter going, hi, we're the Medicaid Estate Recovery Agency, MERP, and we have some questions. And the first letter is a friendly letter. It just says, tell us what Dad had. The second letter is not quite as friendly. It says, we spent $185,000 on Bill's care, and we want to be paid back from the sale of the house. But years ago, some enterprising attorneys figured out that if you put a special warranty deed on your home, it doesn't go through Medicaid estate recovery. So whenever we have families we're helping get on Medicaid, I go, there is a home? Okay, we're going to put a ladybird deed on the home. What? You're going to do what? I'm going to put a ladybird deed on Mom or Dad's house. Well, what does that do? It doesn't change anything. Mom and Dad still own the house. They can live in it, sell it, lease it out. It's their house. But the ladybird deed adds on a beneficiary designation. It says, at the moment of my death as the owner, I choose to give my home to my son, Jesse. Well, by virtue of naming a beneficiary, it immediately goes to my son. There is no Medicaid estate recovery, and there's no probate. Remember we talked earlier, we try to help people avoid probate because it's a waste of time and money. So we're not going to lose the home. All right, so let's talk assets. There are exempt assets, and then there's countable assets. So what's exempt? My home is exempt. If I'm married, there's no limit. If I'm a single guy, they put a $713,000 limit on my house. That covers most of our houses. I'm allowed to have one car. It could be my Prius out there, or it could be a Lamborghini. One car is exempt. Burial programs are exempt, but they have to be made irrevocable. What does that mean? If I go to a funeral home and buy a burial policy, normally it's a revocable policy, which means after I've purchased it, if I change my mind and want to get my money back, I can get my money back. Well, if I can get my money back, it's a countable asset. But if I sign a one-page irrevocable waiver that says I agree I can't surrender the policy, it's exempt. Business assets are exempt. If you own a hardware store or you've got a working ranch, that's an exempt asset. We have to provide tax records, but we can exempt some very substantial business assets. Mineral rights are exempt. Many people have mineral rights if the asset value is less than $6,000. And they take the monthly income and multiply it times a number, and if that number is less than $6,000, mineral rights are exempt. And then we've got the protected resource amount, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. That only applies to couples. So what are countable assets? It's everything else we've got. I've got money in bank accounts, CDs, mutual funds, CDs, money market, checking, savings. I might have stocks, bonds, mutual funds, my retirement accounts, IRA, 401k, all those are countable. If I have multiple vehicles, the second or third vehicle is countable. If I have separate land, that's a countable asset. So how does Medicaid work? There's two magic dates. One's called the snapshot date, and the other is the eligibility date. The snapshot date is the first of the month that my care regimen starts, maybe in a hospital, that leads to a stay in a nursing home. So let's say driving home today, I have a bad accident, and I end up in the hospital, and then I go to a nursing home to rehabilitate. Well, the state's going to go back to the 1st of May because my care regimen started in May, and they do a snapshot. They go, Bill, what do you have? In my case, I'm married, so they go, what do both of you have? And they look at all the assets, and they determine which ones are exempt, which ones are countable. They're going to do a division of assets for a married couple on the snapshot date. They start filling up 2 buckets with countable assets. Remember, there's no quiz today, so you don't have to memorize this. They start filling up 2 buckets. The community spouse can protect up to $154,000. So if my countable assets are $100,000, each bucket's got 50 in it. I'm in the nursing home, my bucket has 50. My bride at home, hers is the protected resource amount. If you get above 308,000, the community spouse's bucket is frozen at 154, and the rest is in the nursing home spouse's bucket. And our goal is we want to protect what's in the nursing home spouse's bucket. That's the goal. Next slide. So the second date is the eligibility date. As of today, if I entered the nursing home, I've got all these countable assets. I'm not eligible in May for Medicaid. But the next date is the eligibility date, and that's the date when my bucket, as the nursing home spouse, is less than $2,000. I become eligible for Medicaid benefits. And then going forward, the first of each month, I need to have less than $2,000 in my bucket. All right, next slide. So we've got a bunch of asset protection strategies. First one is real simple. If I've got money in my bucket as the nursing home spouse, pay bills. I may have credit card balances. Well, use that money. Maybe I haven't yet purchased a burial program, so it's time to go get one. We're all going to have a funeral. Nobody gets out of this life without a funeral, so it's time to go purchase one and make it irrevocable. What if I still have a home mortgage? Well, since the home is exempt, let's pay down that home mortgage. Maybe there's some improvements on my home. There was just a hailstorm. I need a new roof. The water heater's going out. The air conditioner needs to be replaced. Maybe it's time for some new granite countertops so my wife at home likes the place better. Long story short, you can invest in your home because that's an exempt asset. We have a strategy that was approved. Tara said Texas is one of the few Medicaid, or is a Medicaid-friendly state. We can do things in Texas you can't do in most of the other states. And one of those things is dealing with IRA or qualified funds. Most of us today have IRAs, Roths, 401ks, 403bs, maybe 457s if you're from the government. Well, there's a way of repositioning qualified funds to automatically make them exempt. The state has identified different ways of holding those assets that just by repositioning them from a brokerage account to a different instrument, I exempt the asset. I had a fellow, this is 2 years ago, he called me up and he goes, Bill, this is Ron. 7 years ago, you helped my mom get on Medicaid and you protected a lot of her assets. And I said, great, Ron, why are you calling? I need your help, but you can't help me. I said, well, why can't I help you? And he goes, we have too much money. And I said, well, that's a nice problem to have. What do you have, Ron? And he said, well, we've got the house. I said, Ron, that's exempt. And we got $725,000 in savings. Well, what's your savings made up of? Well, about 700 of it is in my wife and my IRAs. We have $25,000 in the bank in cash. I said, Ron, where's that money, that IRA funds? Where are those funds right now? Well, they're in a brokerage account. I go, how do you feel about the stock market? Not so good. You know, I remember 08, I remember 2020, I remember 2000 when markets took big nosedives. And he goes, I don't feel real good about the market. I said, why don't we reposition the funds and protect it, not only from the market, but from Medicaid spend down? you can do that? I said, yeah, we can do that. 2 months later, she went to the nursing home. Her cost of care was $34 a month. We protected all the assets. So people come to us and go, you got to be broke. And I go, it's a choice. It's a choice. Another option for couples is what's called a spousal pension. Remember I said we divide up assets between the spouses. Well, there's a number of strategies to protect the money in the nursing home spouses bucket. But the last one always works. I call it a spousal pension. State has a much longer name for it. If I was sitting with mom and dad's in the nursing home, and I talk to dad, I go, Dad, you got money in your bucket. Do you want to pay it to the nursing home each month, or would you like to pay it to your wife? What? You've got money in your bucket that we've got to do something with. Would you like to pay it to the nursing home, essentially spend it down, or would you like to pay it to your wife? Well, I want to pay to my wife. Right answer. And I go, then we're going to set up a spousal pension. It's a special form of an immediate income annuity that takes the money in the nursing home spouse's bucket, pays it back to the community spouse. We just protected all the assets. There's other strategies. There's a whole range of them. But I'm going to take you through a simple couples example. We've got, and I can't, numbers are small, but we've got a couple that has, about 200,000 of countable assets. You can see that? All right. And on the first of the month that care began, they divided it up, and so we've got essentially $100,000 in both buckets. We got $100,000 in the nursing home spouse's bucket that we got to protect. So the first step is the division of assets. So we have a choice. We're either going to spend down or we're going to exempt or save the assets. The money in the community spouse's bucket is that protected resource amount. It's the amount that the person at home gets to protect automatically. Oh, and other things. This couple happens to have a house. They have a very nice car. They have burial programs, and maybe they have business assets. Those were all exempt. So we don't even have to mess with that. Well, the first thing we're going to do is some of the money in that was divided up between spouses was qualified IRA money. We're going to reposition it. And immediately, it's off the table. It doesn't count. Now, the rest of it, we're going to set up, next slide. We're going to set up a spousal pension. I think there was, 48,000 left? Yeah, in the bucket. And so we're going to set up a spousal pension that pays $1,000 a month to the community spouse over a 48-month period. Well, how much is left to go to the nursing home? Next slide. Nothing. Essentially, nothing. All the money has been protected, and we're now on Medicaid for the person in the nursing home. So now we're going to talk about income. The nursing home spouse's income is the first line of defense of paying for the nursing home. So a community spouse gets to keep all of their income. But the nursing home spouse's income has to be paid to the nursing home. But fortunately, they give us a number of deductions. The first one is personal needs, $75. Not a lot, but something. I also get a deduction for any medical premiums I pay. Maybe I have a Medicare supplement, I have Medicare Part B, I get deductions for that. Then the next question is, how much does the community spouse make? Does the community spouse make more or less than $3,853? Well, they make a lot less. So I can divert income from my side of the ledger, I'm the nursing home spouse, to my community spouse. I can bring my community spouse up to $3,853. And then the remainder income would go to the nursing home. I mentioned earlier that there's an income limit to get on Medicaid. Fortunately, 20 plus years ago, there was a lady in Colorado that made too much to get on Medicaid, but made too little to pay the nursing home. She made too much, made too little. She was screwed. Some enterprising lawyers went to Washington, and they got approved what was originally called the Miller Trust. It's just a glorified checking account that lets people that are over the income limit get on Medicaid. Today it's called a qualified income trust. We help people set it up. We're not attorneys, but we help people set it up. So here's a couple's income example. We've got two spouses. We've got the nursing home spouse has income coming in, and the community spouse has two sources of income, Social Security, and remember we set up that $1,000 a month spousal pension. So that's adding to the community spouse's bucket. So how much goes to the nursing home? That's a good question. First thing, I get to keep $75, whoop-de-doo, of my money for personal needs. I also get a deduction for medical premiums. Remember, I've got a supplement. I get to deduct that. And then they ask the question, well, how much, there's still income left in my bucket. How much does my community spouse make? Does she make more or less than $38.53? She makes less. So what are we going to do? We're going to, again, transfer income to my community spouse. And how much do I pay the nursing home? Zero. So next time somebody says you're going to go broke in the nursing home, tell them to call us or call somebody to get guidance on how to do this. Often we can protect income and assets and qualify. We can't do quite as well with singles, but there, as I mentioned, there are a number of places you can park money to protect it. Another one I didn't mention, some of you may have grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and some people want to leave a legacy. They want to leave something for that next generation. Well, today, to go to college is pretty expensive. Couples and singles can transfer money from themselves to a 529 plan, a college funding plan, or to a uniform transfer to minor account for the child's future. And those transfers aren't considered gifts. So we have people come in and they go, we still got money in mom's bucket. What are we going to do with it? We don't want to gift it, but we sure don't want to spend it at the nursing home. I go, you got 5 grandkids. Why don't we put $10,000 in each one of their 529 plans and leave a legacy? Protect all the money. So lots of strategies. VA and Medicaid, so where do they fit? They're part of a total long-term care plan. There's other strategies we have for helping people pay for long-term care that we're not going to go into today. But just know this, that if you know someone who's getting ready to need long-term care, have a plan to pay for it. 90% of the people that come to see us are conducting what I call a Chinese fire drill. They're coming in a panic, going, Mom had a stroke a month ago. Mom left the hospital, went to the nursing home. She's used up all of her Medicare days. And oh my gosh, we just got the first bill. It's $7,200. I go, yeah. What can we do? Well, we can put a plan together and we can get Mom on Medicaid. Sometimes people come before that. They do what I call pre-planning, which is a lot less stressful. Map out a plan of here's what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, so that when the time comes that we need long-term care, that we're ready to execute the plan. It's like anything in life. If you're going to take a trip to Chicago, you wouldn't just get in the car and start driving. You'd first go, well, let's see. I'm going to be there 2 weeks, and I'm going to go in the summer, so I don't need my winter gear. And I might go swimming, so I'll take my swimming trunks, and I'm going to stay at this hotel, and I know what it costs, so I can afford it, and I'm going to take enough cash so I can afford food. You develop a plan, and then you go have your vacation to Chicago. Or you can just get in the car and start driving, and hopefully you have a good trip. So the goal is maximize assets and income. Next one. Golly, that was a fast hour. We covered a lot of ground. I'd invite any questions that you have. Be happy to answer them, try to. Terry, you want to come back up? Yes?
So, Bill, how often do you, once we apply, let's say if you're a Medicaid, you want to qualify to get on Medicaid in order to take care of long-term, expenses, do you need to do that strategy of qualifying every year? Or is this for example, once you qualify for Medicaid, is that it, or is it an ongoing yearly process? I mean, I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, so I guess the question is, after initial certification for Medicaid, do you have to go through recertification? And the answer is, Tara.
Yes. Yeah. Well, once you have repositioned assets, or once you've spent down to under $2,000, you have to keep the person under $2,000 on the first of every month forever. Yeah. So because every year, about 9 months into the process, you'll get a packet from the state, and it'll say it's time to renew, and they want all the information. What do you have? Has your income changed? Have you dropped your health coverage? Because they want to make sure that you're meeting all the income and asset limits to stay on Medicaid.
So even though your income or assets may have changed during that time, you still have to reapply?
Yeah, and you can't apply for Medicaid until you are in the facility. This is not anything you can do in advance. Now, leading up to it, we can create a plan of what if, here's how we would do it. There are things we can do to protect assets in advance, but to actually do the process and get you under $2,000 and do all those things, and to actually send the application to the state, you have to be in the nursing home. So, yeah.
Question? Yeah, go, no. Yeah.
What if you bring a parent in from out of state, from a different state, and they're here like a month, and they have some kind of a stroke or whatever? Is there, I guess what I'm saying, is there a minimum Texas residency requirement for any?
No.
Okay, so.
As soon as they cross the state
question we have
line.
to ask-
Yeah,
restate the
sorry.
question.
Yeah, so can someone from out of state come in and get on benefits? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. You have to show your passport to get into the state of Texas.
Do they have a green card?
A
Do they-
green
no.
card, and then after that, yeah, day one. I mean, you could move your family member from, Michigan to here, move them into a nursing home and apply for Medicaid that day. There's no window. Yeah.
But then your home is not necessarily exempt depending on the code.
Correct. And that's something we didn't talk about. That's a kind of a next level, but any house that's not your homestead, but it's out of state, has to go up for sale.
The question is, yeah, are homes out of state countable or exempt? In Texas, a home is exempt. Out of state homes are countable unless they're put up for sale. So if we have somebody, let's say mom has just moved here, has a home in Pennsylvania. We've got a family right now going through this. And we said, put the home up for sale. And they go, why? I go, well, number one, it'll exempt it so we can get her on Medicaid. Number two, she gets a step up in basis. If you sell it, she's going to get a step up in basis. No taxes will be due on the sale of that home because of current tax rules. And number three, other states have probate rules that are much more onerous than Texas. You don't want to die owning a home in a northern state. Up there, they say that probate is a lawyer's retirement plan. And the reason is because probate takes 2 years or longer, multiple court hearings, a lot of waste of time and money. So we said, let's sell the home, but what do we do with the cash? Great question. And then we mapped out a plan saying, we're going to receive $300,000 from the sale of the home. Here's how we're going to reposition it. We're going to fund some 529 plans. Mom doesn't have a vehicle. We're going to go buy a car in her name, but she doesn't drive it. She doesn't have to. One car is exempt. So there's multiple strategies. Our job is look at the situation, because everybody's situation is different, and then map a plan to protect as much of the assets as possible.
What's the look back, length of time that Medicaid will look back when you transfer assets?
So the question is, what is the look back period if you've gifted assets, Tara?
Yeah, so it's 5 years. So, if you have parents yourself, tell them to stop giving away their money. It is very generous, but they need to hold on to it for themselves. Anything over $200 that's on your bank statement, they want to know where it went. So just consider anything over $200. Now, tithing doesn't count, just so you know. But yeah, if you now, if you gave away $10,000, I don't know what they would say about that. But they do say tithing is okay. But yeah, you have to be very careful. And we've had families come in and, oh, well, I just, I willed my kids their money. Well, you have a will. Wills don't go into effect until you die. So you didn't will your kids anything. You gifted them their money, and you need to get that back, or we're going to have a big problem. So yes, 5 years.
Yeah, and gifting can become problematic. We've had people come in. There's only two types of cases we don't take. And that's where people come in and go, last year I gave my son $100,000 to start a business. I go, and by the way, the business didn't work out. He lost all of it. He can't refund it. Well, now we've got a penalty period, but we don't have money to private pay during the penalty period. Remember I said gifting allows you to protect 60% of gifted assets. So if today I'm going to give Tara $100,000, she would have to ungift about 40 of that to get me on Medicaid, but then 60,000 is still left over to spend on my quality of life. So if you gift, it's gift and hold, not gift and take a trip to Tahiti, because now there is no money to ungift. So this is getting into
We're getting into the weeds.
but
Yeah.
but so there's ways to protect assets, a lot of ways, and it's just everybody's situation is unique. We have to figure out where you're at and then map a plan. When we take a case, we develop a written plan. So the first thing we do is give our families a written plan that shows step by step, here's exactly how we're going to execute this. Why do we do that? Because there are people like Bernie Madoff that took people's money but then didn't do right by it. And so our goal is, we don't take custodianship of money ever, but our goal is give people a written plan so they know exactly what we're doing. No smoke and mirrors, no trust us, this is all going to work out behind the curtain. No, we go, here's what we're going to do step by step. And in our plans, there's usually 5 or 6 options for preserving assets. We don't tell people which to pick. We go, here's what you can do: A, B, C, D, or E. I want to do A and E. Great. I want to do A, B, C. Great. It's up to the family to decide which strategies to use. Once we've done the plan, Tara takes ownership of the case from an execution standpoint. She's going to file the application. She becomes the authorized representative for the family. You'll never talk to a Health and Human Services caseworker. You really don't want to.
I'll handle that.
Yeah. I mean, all the experienced caseworkers that we enjoyed working with have all retired. So today we have people that are 6 weeks, 6 months on board with Health and Human Services. And when we submit an application and go, yeah, we paid down the mortgage and we bought a new car, and they go, I don't think you can do that. What? I don't think you can do that. And we go, oh boy. Man, this Medicaid's pretty complex. I wish we had somebody that could look over our shoulder. You don't have a supervisor by chance, do you? Oh, you do? Could we bring them into the conversation? Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. A year ago, we had a rogue caseworker. We did what the Texas Medicaid handbook said we could do, and the caseworker said, denied. We went to legal approved, but the caseworker wouldn't accept it, denied again. We finally had to go to the hearing, actually a court hearing. And the first witness is the caseworker for the state of Texas. And the judge said, so what is your position on this? And after 6 months, she said, this morning I got a call from policy. I've been told to approve this case. We had 80 hours, maybe 100 hours in on this case. But, we don't walk away and we don't give up. We keep fighting. We've never had a Medicaid case denied, and we've done over 1,700 cases. So when we take this on, we're not trying to get somebody on Medicaid. We get them on Medicaid. I mean, and if we don't, we have a fee that we charge. Nobody's asked what our fee is. Should we tell them? We have a one-time fee. It covers VA and/or Medicaid. It's $4,500. For that, we guarantee we're going to get somebody on VA and/or Medicaid. Many of our clients start getting care at home. They're a veteran. We get them VA benefits. 2 or 3 years later, their health declines. They have to go to skilled nursing. You've already paid our fee. We move on and file for Medicaid. So,
Anybody else?
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
thank you.
I think you can understand why we had this topic, because it's so complex, and it's more than what an average person can know. And even if you think that, well, this will never happen to us because we have so much money, well, you never know what's down the road. You don't know what you're going to need in the future, and you never know who else you can help. And that's the main thing. One of the things we want to do is try to help everybody else help somebody else, so that people know to look for help. So many of us just really don't even know where to look for help. So Terry Garrett is going to be with us next to talk about legal aspects. We're going to take a short break, probably about 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll get back. We'll start back about between 10:50 and 10:55. We'll try to get everybody back in here. Okay? Thank you.